This is the moment we've been waiting for. A time in human history where exponential technologies have rendered the world more virtually connected, more empowered, and more informed than ever before. Yet, we're still suffering a lot. So how do we make the most of our modern tools to amplify and connect with what truly matters? To light the way, I've asked some friends to join us around the proverbial fire to share stories of discovering their purpose hidden within life's winding path and to explore the future we really want. Let's meet where community, technology, and ancient wisdom converge. Today, we're speaking with one of the world's leaders in ethical AI. As a doctor of computer science, he's worked at Microsoft, Google, and now Mozilla. After helping develop the infamous YouTube recommendation algorithm at Google, this French software engineer now hops down cyber rabbit holes on a quest to preserve human agency. His mission? To reveal the harmful nature of said algorithms and reverse their side effects. How? That's the question. But you bet it includes redirecting metrics of success from optimizing watch times to maximizing things like well-being, wisdom, and true connection. This episode is for all concerned citizens, engaged optimists, loving parents, and especially business-savvy techies with an appetite to change the game. Please meet my dear friend, Guillaume Chaslot. Guillaume, You've spoken to a lot of press outlets. You've been working with people in academia, in the private sector. You've got collaborators all around the world, all working together to bring something to life. I want to ask, what is your higher mission here? What's your purpose in all of this work?
Okay, so the vision for the next 10 years is that people are in control of AI and not the other way around. So that seems crazy to think like, okay, we are going to be controlled by AI, but that's already the case. When you put a kid on YouTube, he's going to watch whatever the YouTube algorithm gives him. So YouTube's AI is already in control of our kids, and we have no idea what it's doing with them. Sometimes we watch the videos they give on you, we are like, why does it give this video? And we can't even explain it. So that's really harmful. That's really strange, and we shouldn't be in this situation. We should be in a situation where parents are in control of the AI that gives videos to their kids, where we're in control of the AI that take financial decisions for us and we don't even know about them.
Very interesting. I appreciate the simplicity of just, in a way, ensuring that people stay in control. So back in the early, let's say 2012, maybe 2011. Could you just take us through the moment you got your job at Google? What was that like to learn that you were going to be working there?
So it was amazing to learn that I was going to work there because there are so many smart people. There are so many amazing projects. The sky was the limit. There was like so much computing power, etc. So it seemed completely amazing.
Okay, so you started working on this algorithm. Can you take us through the realization that something felt off? Something was weird.
So I noticed something was weird because the way the algorithm was designed, like the UI of it, like you have this recommendation on the right, and the AI doesn't really know what to give you. So if you like something, if you watch something for a long time, we know, okay, we're going to give you something similar. But if you don't like something, we have no idea what else to give you. So I started to realize that it was creating these rabbit holes where we recommend always the same thing to you. So you start to watch, let's say, a cat video, and then we think, oh, he must really like cat. Let's give him another cat video. So either you watch it and we are like, oh, he really, really likes cat, and then give more cat videos, or we don't know. So we needed something to get out of the rabbit hole. It's like you can go only one way. You have no way to go back. That's when I started thinking there was a fundamental problem with the design.
Okay, and so when you had that feeling, then what happened? Did you share that with someone? What happened?
Yeah, so I didn't want to be the French guy who complains and say, look, this is bad, this is bad. So I wanted to come up with a solution. So like, okay, here's my solution against this problem. It's like something to go back and to see more of a big picture, discover more type of content, seeing both sides. When you see one side of a narrative, also be able to see the other side. So I developed some tools to enable to do that. But at Google, at the time, it was really not the priority to try to do this type of things. There was no realization that it was going to be a problem. Now it's very different. But at the time, people didn't care about that. So they didn't understand what I was doing. They thought, oh, he doesn't understand what we're doing. We're doing watch time. We're just keeping people watching a long time, so advertisers are really happy. And he's trying to give more diversity, he's trying to give both sides. It's really weird. It's not what we're doing.
Right, because how are they measuring success of the algorithm?
So success was when someone was staying a long time.
And
So
how long are we talking? We're talking a long time.
yeah, a long time, because the distribution of watch time is very large. So you have like some huge amount of watch time on some people who never click on recommendations. Some people will click 16 recommendations in a row, and some people absolutely never do that. So yeah, so if the algorithm works well, then it will keep someone watching super long. An example is someone who watches a conspiracy theory and he goes down this rabbit hole of conspiracy theory. He can watch for hours and hours. So from the point of view of the algorithm, this will be a success. This will be a gold mine. So then the algorithm will recommend a conspiracy theory to everybody.
Okay, so Guillaume, I know what you do, but many people here may not know exactly what it means to work in AI. Can you just say, like, what do you do for a living? What's your work?
So right now I'm working for Mozilla. So when we met at YouTube, the goal was to predict which video to recommend on YouTube. And that's a big deal because 70% of the videos come from recommendations that the AI gives. So usually they give it on the right, the current video, or they give it on the home page. They are so good at computing recommendation that 70% of the views come from there.
That's super interesting, but we still haven't heard exactly what you do. What do
Yes,
people call you?
software engineer. So basically, you make the program that will compute this recommendation. So we take each person, we compare, like the program takes each person in the world, compares the watch history of everybody with their watch history, and then compute recommendations.
So you create or the algorithm generates recommendations based on people's watch history.
Exactly.
Okay. Okay. And you're a software engineer. So before we dive into this algorithm and some of what that represents, why did you become a software engineer?
So I was really fascinated with artificial intelligence. At the time when I started, it seemed like a complete buzzword, and we were so far of doing something that's actually intelligent that we were thinking, okay, we're just doing programming. Why call it artificial intelligence? But right now, programs are becoming so good that it seems pretty legitimate to call them artificial intelligence, even though it's absolutely not intelligent in a way that you and me are intelligent. It's very smart at doing a very specific task. There was this challenge that was the game of Go. That was a huge challenge for AI after chess, basically. And so we tried to make an AI that would be as good as human at Go, but nobody could manage. And so many people were trying, so we were trying too. And we had like this big breakthrough where we managed to, this was called Monte Carlo research, that leveled up the level of the AI by a crazy amount. And that was a revolution for the game of Go.
What do you love about your work?
The thing that's the most motivating is that it's the future. Like in the future, we won't be alone as humans. We will be interacting with AIs all the time. And right now is a moment where we define how this interaction goes. So AI seems like it's just a tool, but it's a tool that's so complex that it really shapes it really shapes you. It really shapes the way you interact with it, the way you interact with each other, much more than any other tool in the past.
Right. And so we're looking back, this is 2012, and you were at Google until 2000.
I was from 2010 to 2013 at
Okay,
Google.
great. So this was during the Obama administration. And this is all before 2016 election, where we started seeing a lot of activity and potential risks around these algorithms for shaping global politics. And so you've got this concern at Google. Now, I asked you a question while we were speaking last week, because this podcast is geared at looking at the connection between community, technology, and wisdom. And so my question to you is, what does that mean to be in touch with wisdom? What does that mean to you?
For me, wisdom is like these lessons that we have had for years and years that come down through generations and generations. And what we were doing at YouTube is trying to avoid all that. We were thinking, okay, things are completely different now with AI. We can completely reinvent everything. So they didn't even try to integrate all this wisdom into their algorithms. They were just trying to maximize watch time with their brand new toy. So one piece of wisdom, for instance, a concrete example of wisdom is that you need to see both sides. If you're arguing about something, you need to see both sides. So it's wisdom that comes from Aristotle, and it seems obvious, but the algorithm doesn't do that. It doesn't even try.
Yeah, what I detect is a bit of the battle between data and wisdom. Like, does information trump what we've known in a way all along? It's this ancient knowing. It's old, as you said, passed on through generations. It's been born through deep philosophical thought and debate. There was something you said that was really interesting last week. I spoke with Kelly Robinson about the chakras, and we discuss, a couple of guests have talked about how we're in a moment where the crown chakra, our mind, is being a bit exploited and overused. We've got this whole human instrument. And so you're very familiar with that instrument because you're an exceptional dancer and you've trained it very well. Even if you walked in 8 years ago not knowing left from right exactly, you have worked on it and dedicated yourself to attuning the instrument of the body. And there was something you said that stood out to me in our last conversation about where you felt the concern in your body. You know, in tango, we begin with creating the connection between dancers in our heart and our chest. When you were talking about the concern you were feeling at Google, you mentioned having a gut feeling. And I found that really interesting, because gut feeling, it's using the neurons in the actual gut. So it's like our brain in our gut. But there's something very primordial about that. And people, you know, I grew up with my mom telling me, listen to your gut. You'll know if something's safe or not based on your body. It's like a tuning fork. And so you mentioned feeling something off, but you didn't know how to express this to people in your team because it wasn't rational. And so how do you want to take us back there?
Yeah, there were rational things that I was like, okay, we're abandoning all this wisdom, of rationality, of like helping people communicate with each other in ways that we've done for years and years, and now we're just putting AI, and we're not putting this wisdom into the AI. So that felt really wrong, and I could feel in my gut that if you let just an AI go loose like that, things will go wrong, and people will just be stuck into these rabbit holes, and we could do much better. And I tried to express it like in a very rational way, in a very unemotional way. But now I feel like, yeah, it's important when you feel these emotions that say, okay, something is really wrong. It will lead to harm, to use your gut feeling to go there.
I know there's this very famous example of the Space Shuttle Challenger and the O-ring that had an issue. And that small example that's been used since the 80s of what happens when people in the team who are developing the product or the spaceship or the algorithm have a concern and it can't get to where it needs to get to the final decision maker of something to be done, or even if it does get to the final decision maker, maybe the desire for the success of that original vision overrides new information and potential risk. So I want to ask, like, do you have any thoughts of what could have helped back in 2000, in 2010 to 13, as you're developing this algorithm? Do you think that there could have been some way that the concerns would have been more heard? What was missing for non-rational or unemotional conversation to be considered?
Yeah, so I thought about that a lot, and I think I should have expressed it. So I was feeling it emotionally, and I should have expressed it more with my emotions. I mean, of course, it should be something rational, but being expressed more with my emotions, because then people didn't take it seriously enough, maybe. So I feel it's really important to get this balance of emotion and rationality, because if you just express something rationally, you can't signal harm to other people. You need to use your emotions for that, because otherwise somehow we might over-rationalize it and go through it.
And since then, 2013, a lot has come out around the realm of necessity for psychological safety at work, where expressing emotions actually makes sense, but it's not always been the case. So that makes sense that back then you didn't see the path for how to communicate this well.
There's been a lot of things going on, because first, in the last few years, like maybe for 15 years, the press has been really enthusiastic about technology in general and AI. And in the last 2 or 3 years, we started realizing that there were some ethical issues. And sometimes Facebook and Google were not taking the right decision. They were just putting their profit first. So press has been calling them out. Many major newspapers, from the Wall Street Journal, the Washington Post, the Guardian, the New York Times, have been calling out technologists and saying, oh, wait, be careful, you're causing harm. And now there seem to be like some backlash from the technologists.
Why aren't these incredibly intelligent people being able to use all of this information to make decisions that incorporate what we've learned from the past? What do you think is causing that block?
What's causing the block is that they have so much power now, they could do absolutely everything. Like the sky would be the limit. So you don't know like in which direction to go. Like, should you recommend more like this type of content or this type of content? So like they tried to get something that was neutral, and they thought, okay, watch time is kind of neutral. Like if you watch more, it means you like it. It means we get more money from advertisers. It's like a win-win. So they were thinking like watch time is this like neutral win-win. And we are just going to use watch time and maximize on watch time. So instead of like allowing us to put all the wisdom we had for thousands of years, we were just like, no, we are not going to do that. We're just going to go for watch time. It's very silly in a way that we just forbid ourselves to even use the best thing we developed the last thousands of years.
I can think of one other thing that, at least for me, can get in the way of me making wise decisions. And that is when I'm going too quickly. If I haven't slept and I've had too much coffee and I have 30 things I need to do in a day, I'm probably not going to make my best decisions. In fact, there's a saying, if it's urgent, it's not important. If it's important, it's not urgent. Now, that can't be applied to everything, because obviously if you've broken your leg, that's pretty urgent, go get care. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about long-term decisions and the direction of something large that has a self-fueling momentum, like an algorithm. So go fast and break things doesn't sound like it comes from a place of wisdom to me. It sounds like it comes from a hopped up teenager who wants to have a lot of fun. And that's great. Have fun. But, and that's a big but, when you start playing with decisions that affect youth at such a wide scale as like the global youth, and we're seeing studies come out about the way social media affects the brain and development, and how, you know, the Pavlovian response of getting dings and the infinite scrolling of all of our social media experience plays into the reptilian brain, which is not our wisest instrument. It's like the oldest, dumbest part of our instrument that has kept us alive. So thanks to that. But Guillaume, what you're saying is right now, the metric of success, this quote unquote neutral metric of watch time, what would be a different metric of success that would represent a more healthy or balanced or ethical online experience?
Well, many things would be actually much better just knowing what, if you would click, okay, I've learned something on this video, and you would optimize for this learning experience, then of course you would make an algorithm that will maximize how much people learn. That would be like so much better at scale, at the scale of Facebook, at the scale of YouTube. If you maximize how people learn, then it's much more interesting than just maximizing the amount of time they spend watching ads. But you could maximize many more things. You can maximize things like, let's say you say, okay, this is really considerate, this is really important. People could use their feeling to say what they actually think about the things they see. A lot of times on YouTube, on Facebook, Facebook propose some videos that are hateful, that are like scary. So I watch them. It doesn't mean that I want them to be recommended to other people. I want a way to say, yeah, watch that, but please don't recommend it to other people. That's crap.
In the recent article I read about Facebook and some of the new steps they're taking to be a safer online space, there's a project called Eat Your Vegetables.
Mm-hmm.
What does
Yes,
that mean exactly? Can you share with us?
I think the Eat Your Vegetable was just a bad name that was given inside to the project to make fun of the project. But basically, the project was saying the following: like people who spend a lot of time on Facebook and posted a lot of content did get seen much more than other people. So naturally, they were recommended more by the algorithm. They were amplified more. So the algorithm favors people who talk a lot and post a lot of content. So that's absolutely not democratic, because it's not like one person, one vote. It's like these people who interact all the time. And who are these people who interact all the time? They're either people who are paid to do so they are propagandists, or they are people who have nothing else to do with their life. So they're like this very, very hateful people who have nothing else to do with their life. So they're the worst type of people. So basically on Facebook, on YouTube, the worst type of people are the ones who are having the most impact on the algorithm. And this project was like, okay, we are going to reduce the impact on these super users of Facebook. And they went to Zuckerberg and said, okay, we need to reduce the impact of these people. They have too much impact. And Zuckerberg said, no, because like these people use Facebook more, so they deserve more impact on the algorithm.
Yeah.
And so Zuckerberg, I think there was a compromise where he did like unable to dumb down this, but just by a little bit. So it was like this weird compromise, but that shows to me that Facebook is really not democratic, and that the person it amplifies the most are actually often the worst.
Thanks, Guillaume. And I really hear and I underline, you know, the exploration of the space of creating new metrics of success, because that's what every business and all of us need to do. It's like, what are the rules of the game? Quote unquote, how do we win? Thank you for clarifying new potential metrics of success that aren't based on capturing and holding the attention of users at all cost, essentially. And of course, using our reptilian brain, what's going to get our attention the most, but fight, flight, freeze information. But this is important to start looking at. What would be healthy and in balance for children especially, and then also for adults who don't understand why this is working so well. We're in a particular global moment, especially in the United States right now. We've been going through racial justice protests. We're seeing a great deal of upheaval around division as well as extreme thought. And so I want to ask you to share with us your little experience online. It's a tiny little microcosm moment of how we may react automatically and perhaps how that doesn't really help us in the long run. Could you share with us the moment you had with your friend Amel?
So it was a few years back, maybe 5 or 6 years back. And I had this really good friend, Amel, and she was posting always these posts that were really critical of Westerners, and she was living in France, so I was wondering why she was posting only about that. So I started to react directly on Facebook and say, Amel, I think you're becoming racist. And then she just blocked me. And at the time, I didn't realize what was going on, because I didn't understand how someone as educated, smart, kind, and great, a great person would be posting this type of content. And what I realized afterwards is that the Facebook algorithm puts people into these rabbit holes. So she had a lot of friends from Northern Africa who were posting this type of hateful content was just very promoted by the Facebook algorithm. So she posted that because it's what she saw. So it was her view of the world. It was like always white people doing bad things to Africans. And then at the end, she was just trying to warn people about all the dangers, but she was just seeing like a small part of the whole thing, just because the algorithm is designed that way. So my reaction, calling her racist, was not helping at all. It was just maybe even making it worse, like reinforcing that I was just trying to attack her and not trying to understand what was going on, why she was posting that. So now it's very, very difficult to get these people out of their rabbit hole when they start to be racist or sexist or anti-religious or extremely religious. It's extremely difficult to break these rabbit holes because the algorithm is pushing people toward them by the billions.
For those who are interested to learn more about what that really means, to take the concept of the rabbit hole online further, I will recommend the podcast that you were a part of, put out by The Daily through the New York Times, that has a new show called Rabbit Hole. So people can go check that out and hear more about what it means to fall prey to the rabbit hole experience and end up in a watch time tunnel on YouTube, and how that can affect one's life and some of the risks there. So I won't go too far into that because there's other people covering that space. What's interesting to me here with this story with Amel, Guillaume, is so you have this person who's expressing her views, right? And so with our freedom of speech, we'd go, that's great. People are expressing themselves. Okay, it doesn't matter what our beliefs are. We're a tolerant society. We want everyone to be able to speak what they think. Then you've got Guillaume, who sees this and doesn't like the engagement and the pattern of energy and potentially racist or at least judgmental or intolerant views around Westerners. So then you chime in, and your choice was to do so on her feed and publicly, essentially, right? And so not only was there maybe a strong word of using one that's got weight these days of racism, but it's now done publicly. So what happens is more engagement, more intensity, fuel to that fire. So can you just share maybe a couple thoughts? What could you have done differently? Say we're out in the world and we're seeing people having an argument and there's maybe some racist or stereotypical harmful thoughts about other people coming out. What could we do that's maybe a wise response to that moment, thinking about your experience online?
So I think in a lot of cases where we feel we should respond publicly because it seems that's where the debate is, right? But then, yeah, responding publicly just put fuel on the fire. So sometimes it's much wiser to have replied privately and to have been compassionate with her. And I think when you understand that the algorithms are pushing people toward hatred, it's easier to be compassionate with someone because you're like, it's not like they're not terrible people. It's just that they're in a terrible space, maybe. So you need to have like this private, healthy discussion with them. And that's really tricky. That's a lot of effort, but that's the only thing we can do right now.
I know we spoke a little bit about this, and what came to mind as I was listening to you break some of this down, and as I've looked more into Tristan Harris's work with the Center for Humane Technology and other people who are bringing the risks of AI and our online world to light, particularly in front of policymakers, is this visual of we've got this new online reality. It's like the world in the cloud. And what we have been evolving here on Earth in the 3D realm is that's been taking a long time, and wars and a lot of mistakes and really ugly history to hopefully build and generate wisdom. This doesn't work. When there's a conflict, don't chime in violently or it causes a brawl. Now we've got this sort of Wild West atmosphere online still, where there isn't regulation yet, where people still don't realize, oh, if I fire my gun in the saloon because I've had a couple drinks and I think it's no big deal, and frankly, I play video games and this seems a lot like that, and there's not real consequences online, it's different, cyberbullying, we know it's not the case. These online actions have very real physical human world implications and consequences. How do we stay healthy? How do we stay connected and aligned? You know, I'm imagining staying on our axes in Tango. What are a couple of things that we could do right now to be in more alignment?
So I think the most important is to realize when sometimes it's not the right time, or we're getting particularly upset online, or it's okay to disengage and not feel like everything is life and death situation and like reacting like it is, because algorithm will push towards that, will push us towards saying more hateful things. When you say something kind on YouTube or on Facebook, you don't get as many views as when you say something hateful. And so it's very tricky to know how to get views without falling into this hateful rabbit hole.
I hear be aware, calm down, and I'll add in pause. As someone who used to deal with a lot of anxiety and this idea that I had so much I had to do immediately, the reaction is to do everything and not think about it. And it's very uncomfortable to simply not do something and just be with the feelings. And I think right now more than ever, strengthening the muscle of listening, first to ourselves, really listening, and then being able to be a space of listening for others without reaction. And it's not what you're saying. These algorithms are actually retraining us backward to react, to engage and give negative attention over any attention. And in fact, our greatest strength is our ability to be quiet and hold space. So, Guillaume, thank you so much for exposing these different elements and helping us go into the examples of what this looks like, the risks of AI, as well as what I want to ask you. You know, you mentioned your vision for 10 years from now is that people are controlling AI and not the other way around. What makes you feel good about imagining your life in 10 years from now? What are you looking forward to? What is that world that we're creating?
Well, I think in one word, it's connection, and like real connection. Like we feel we can just achieve scores like money, watch time, etc. And that like separates us from each other. So trying to build this genuine connection, whether it's relationships, personal relationships or friendships. I think this is going to be so important. And algorithms are not really helping us to build the best connections right now.
The last guest that we had on the show was Anita Sanchez, who's got a doctorate in organizational development and behavioral sciences. She's the author of The Four Sacred Gifts, Indigenous Wisdom for Modern Times. She was the last speaker in our Circle Around the Fire, and she is passing a question to you. The question is, what is yours to be and do in the creation of a thriving world?
Yeah, I think I need to find a way to repair part of the damage that has been done and expose the damage of bad AIs.
And once you expose the damage,
and it's really easy for people to take action. The problem right now is to see the damage. We don't even see the damage. It's like our house is on fire and we have no idea. So the important thing for me right now is to warn people about the dangers and look at it, not solve it directly.
Now, Guillaume, you have the talking piece and you're going to pass it to someone else now. What's your question to the next guest?
In which area of life do you want to be the most aware?
Thanks for joining us on Path and Purpose. Before you go, is there something you want to take with you? Perhaps a story that sparked a new thought or feeling for how you want to live closer to what matters most. Add your voice to the circle by leaving a note in the comments, and we hope you'll continue walking the path with us on SoundCloud, iTunes, and YouTube for stories from future guests about making meaning in this emerging world. Until then, let's be safe and have fun.